Hey guys, Lorenzo here, episode 3, where we're trying to attain orbit. Last episode we played around with some sounding rockets, some of them even got quite high, but the main problem we had was with unreliable engines. Well, let's have a look at the biggest sounding rocket yet, the, what did I call them? The LT3. This one has two engines, same as the one from last episode, but a larger fuel tank and a smaller upper stage so that hopefully the engine doesn't fail. Now, while this rocket ascends, let us talk about how I want to do things in this series. I want to do contracts and make money with the rockets, but I'm not going to accept the contract and then try to build the rocket. Because of the build time plugin, building takes really long, takes multiple months, and the contracts have deadlines quite short, sometimes less than a month, sometimes just a few years. So there's a real risk of failing the contract because your rocket isn't done in time if you need one or two tries. So I want to try and resemble a real rocket company where we get functional rockets, put them somewhere in the hangar, and then roll them out once we have a contract. Now that robs us of the advances. Here's this rocket reaching the end of stage 1 life, by the way. This is not the point of the episode, this is more a background for me talking, so excuse me for not explaining it too much. So we're gonna try and get functional rockets and then accept the contract. This makes money tight. We have currently about 30,000 funds with which I want to design an orbital rocket that can put something in orbit. Then we accept the contract for an artificial satellite, and then we're rolling in cash, and then we can work on getting people to Mars. Anyway, here we have the upper stage, and what is unfortunately going to happen is that the engine is going to fail prematurely. Not super prematurely, but prematurely nonetheless. Actually, I'm a big liar. This didn't fail prematurely, this went really high. Sorry, not knowing my footage from 4 or 5 days ago. The sour bit here is that this made it over 2,500 kilometers, the goal of the contract, but that contract had since expired, which taught me about all I told you before. We did make some altitude records, and this puts us in the funds. This puts the funds of about 30,000 in our bank total. So here we're going to try and design a real orbital rocket. This is really similar to the big sounding rocket, except that it's rather larger, has 4 RD-103 engines, a second stage which also contains an RD-103 engine, and then the upper stage with the AJ-10, nicknamed super unreliable piece of dog shit upper stage engine. But hey, it's all we've got, and we're gonna work with it. There are a few challenges in getting to orbit at this early stage of technology. I think the biggest challenge will arguably be the unreliable rockets. They will only burn for about 2 minutes reliably, and then the failure chance just skyrockets. This really limits the amounts of stages you can. This limits the stages you can build. They tend to be quite small. A second challenge is control. You'll have noted I angled the rocket over a few degrees to the east so that it may launch on the proper vector. This is because I cannot actually control the rocket until the second stage. That's because the avionics units have a mass limit, and the ones that are currently available to me have a mass limit that is very much lower than the first stage mass. That's obviously a problem. So that really forces you to tilt the rocket like this and not get a really optimal ascent trajectory. This one here though, we're calling it the Sputnik with a Z. It's performing pretty well so far. The first stage is powering it through the atmosphere. I'll resume more about the challenges of getting to orbit later, but they will become apparent, I promise you. So here we are, first stage burnout. I'm gonna try and ignite the second stage before actually separating, because if you don't do it right, this happens. We try to ignite the second RD-103 engine whilst we're actually decelerating through the atmosphere. This means that I was too late with igniting it, and that means there's vapor in the fuel lines, the engine won't ignite. We are 50 kilometers up, we're carrying some science experiments though, so we do get some science from the mission, but the second stage is ruined, there's no second ignition chance, and there's no way this rocket is going to make orbit now. Now that is the second challenge. These engines, they will only ignite once, and then you have to keep them on or turn them off, but then you can't turn them on again. And you'll have to make do with that. Trying to ignite them whilst decelerating is not possible or even a good idea. It might be possible, I don't know how, but here we go. The third stage here did ignite, probably because we weren't really decelerating. I was reasoning we're spinning, so maybe we get some goodness that way. Either way, this mission is ruined. The upper stage getting some science over the ocean, but again the AJ-10 engine fails before the fuel is even burnt. So I don't think this one even gets out of the atmosphere. For the next rocket, what I'm trying to do to fix this is to add some solid boosters, like some really small solid boosters to the second stage to give that second of forwards acceleration to be able to light that second stage engine. Let's see how that goes. I'm going to put that on the launch pad and proceed any moment now. There we are. On the launch pad, same rocket as before, only we have some boosters on the second and third stages. Okay, igniting the pumps on the clamps to save a few drops of fuel. There we go. Liftoff on the 4 RD-103 rockets. And we're making a very similar ascent as last time because, well, apart from the solid boosters, 2 for the second stage, 2 for the third stage, this is the same rocket. So here we go, angling a little bit towards the west, all aerodynamically guided. There is no control, no control input possible with the primitive guidance systems we have. Problems. The RD-103 engine has failed one of the 4. For a few seconds it seems as though the rocket will stabilize, will carry on with one engine out, but then it starts to angle towards the sky, flips over and disintegrates due to aerodynamic stresses. Too bad. Another rocket lost, another half year spent constructing a new one. Actually it's 120 days, so not a half year. A quarter spent to construct a new rocket, and our funds are dwindling pretty rapidly. Unfortunately, hey, but there's one science bit, but not a lot of science. Most of the scrap science has been done, and we rebuilt the rocket and we light off again. As this was due to a unfortunate failure of the main engines, we did not modify the rocket at all. This should fly as well. If the engines work, this should fly as anticipated. So no redesign other than a swift spanking to the engineers that made the engines. Here we are, first stage cut off, this time no malfunctions, and we are not in a rush because we have the kick stages separating the fairings and the first stage. Any moment now. I'm waiting to coast up a little higher for less resistance. Here we are, they're separated, and now we get to fire the boosters and light the engines. Unfortunately, it didn't work. The RD-103 didn't light. Perhaps the acceleration was too short or too not strong enough to overcome the deceleration due to gravity and drag, but it wasn't enough and the engine didn't in fact light. So here we are, 3 launches further down the line. A lot of money spent, a lot of years spent constructing new rockets, and we haven't even made it to space yet. I've ran some simulations and they all came out pretty well, but the real life rocket launches not so much. Now there is a silver lining to this misery, which is that in the background we have been able to get some R&D done. Because one thing I haven't been able to talk about a lot is the last challenge of getting the rocket to orbit, which is the limited tank size. I'm using the procedural tanks, and they have a limit of 15 meters long and I think 2.5 meters or maybe 3 meters wide. And oh my god. I'm looking out my window in the real world and there's a big fire on the horizon. I'll get into that later. The tanks, they carry fuel which you use on your stages, and if you can't make them larger you cannot really get more fuel into them, and even if you could, your engines don't burn long enough because then they fail and stop, like it happened here on the upper stage. This wasn't really going anywhere anyway because the second stage had a complete mission failure, but still. Alright, so back to the drawing board, adding more boosters. Now a double set of 2 boosters for the second stage. 2 boosters to light, and then 2 boosters to light in parallel with the RD-103 ignition. That should do it. Here we have this rocket. Let us see if that will in fact work. Very small changes. I think this is the second to last one we can afford on our budget. I have accepted the easy sounding rocket contracts, but they only offset a small portion of the cost. These rockets cost between 6 and 10,000 monies, and those contracts give like 1,500. So we're very invested in getting to orbit here. Well, no mishaps on the first stage, fortunately. Separation is gonna happen, but we have a unfortunate tilt in the rocket. I'm trying to wait that out. Hopefully the aerodynamics in the fins will fix that, and it seems as they will. So trying to separate the fairing and the second stage at the proper time where there's not going to be a lot of problems with that. Here we go, no rotation. The engine is still ready to ignite. It's getting a little bit higher out of the atmosphere, waiting as the first boosters, that's the second boosters, and there goes the RG-103. We did it. In-flight ignition of a gas generator turbopump liquid fuel bipropellant engine. This is the first time this worked in this playthrough. Amazing. So we have a second stage with a third stage on top, and that's gonna power this satellite, which carries an X-ray detector and some small science instruments, hopefully into orbit. Well, the second stage shows no surprises, burns as it should, and burns out now. Now we're going to separate the third stage. This also has some solid boosters to make sure the engine can ignite. There we go. And the AJ-10 lights as it should. So far it's thumbs up for the mission. We have shrunk the third stage considerably because, well, the engine was never getting to burn all of its propellant, so you know, no point in bringing so much of it. After this rocket we only have money to, well, we basically need to prove our concept here. We don't have money to build another rocket, but if we know it works we can accept the contract and then build the rocket with that money, and then we just have to hope for no failures. We're currently at 3.8 kilometers per second. We're shooting for something like 7.8. And according to the Delta V calculator, it's going to be a real close thing whether or not this is actually going to make orbit. Really hoping it is, because that would mean another milestone in the space program, and we can start focusing on our ultimate goal, which is a manned mission to Mars with returning them safely to the Earth, obviously. We haven't done any crewed stuff yet, and it's going to be a fair amount of missions before we get that done, but you never know. You have to set goals. This one is from one of the viewers, and I think it's a good one, parallel to the SpaceX/NASA goals. Let's get some guys to the, well, not to the moon, I was going to say that, but let's get them to Mars, get them back, make our species durable, interplanetary, and awesome. It's already awesome. Come on, we're a good species. We're not a good species. We're a terrible species, but we're interesting. Let's keep it at that. Anyway, upper stage burning more than halfway through its fuel. We're nearing the end of the episode as well, and it all remains to be seen whether we end it on a high note or on a pensive note. We're at 350 kilometers, well over the ocean. If this was an intercontinental ballistic missile, I'm sure Africa would start to get afraid right about now. Fuel is getting frightfully low. Speed is high though, we're approaching 6 kilometers per second. That's fast, man. That's blink and you're gone. Oh snap. The AJ-10 failed before exhausting its fuel, and it was going to be a close thing. Maybe we wouldn't have made it either way, but now we definitely didn't make it. So here we are, we have no money. We have no orbital rocket. We can accept the contract for a lot of cash, but then we have a very strict deadline. So here's what we're going to do in the next episode. We are going to start up our crewed program, get some quick wins there, get some money in the bank, and continue R&D on our orbital rocket. That's going to happen in episode 4. Thanks for watching today. I'm Lorenzo. See you later.